and gentlemen, loggies and leaders, it is my pleasure to introduce our next panel, moderated by Lieutenant Colonel Eric Nanner Peele. Lieutenant Colonel Peele is the Executive Officer to the Commander of Air Force Materiel Command, Tinker Air Force Base. A fellow 2006 graduate of the United States Air Force Academy, his previous command experience includes maintenance and logistics operations for the HH-60G and multiple special operations variants of the C-130. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Peele and his panelists.
All right, good morning. I am going to apologize up front because I'm really nervous. There's a lot of people here. And sometimes when I get nervous, I'm from Eastern North Carolina. My hic might come out a little bit, and I might slur some words, so I apologize up front. But yeah, it's my honor, pleasure to moderate our 2024 LOA Fireside Chat. And honestly, I think we're the warm-up for the Chiefs that are going to follow us, so we'll stand by for that. But for all of you history buffs out there, the Fireside Chat was actually popularized by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1930s and 40s, as he presented a series of radio broadcasts to provide updates on various topics and communicate directly with the American people. And similarly, we use the Fireside Chats for our senior leaders to pass along the latest and most relevant information coming from our department leadership. So on this final day, what better way to bookend our time together than to hear from our top three and later on from our chiefs. So we're gonna please welcome back to the stage your loggy leaders. We have Lieutenant General Tom, HEB coffee is my lifeblood, Miller.
That's true. That's true.
Next we have Lieutenant General Stacey, Piano Man, Hawkins.
That's true.
All right. And then our last panelist, she's a Disney fan, and she wished upon a star. It only took a few months to get there, but now she's at the...
Yeah.
She arrived at the She arrived at the magical place of AFMC as our DCOM, our newest DCOM. So if you would, please welcome them back to the stage for me. All right. So I might actually be looking for a new job after that intro, but I'd like to jump right into our time together and maximize this time to hear about the latest happenings in our community. Now, before any of you may tune out at our first question, the intent here is to introduce some maybe new to all of us strategic ideas that are gonna affect you at every level, maybe whether it's military, civilian, contractor. So without further ado, our first topic addresses an idea coming out of the Defense Department regarding a regional sustainment framework. So I'm going to try to reclaim some sense of trust that I can lead a professional panel. I'll start with my boss, Lieutenant General Hawkins. Okay. Currently, the DoD has published a regional sustainment framework fact sheet. And this is ahead of an official document that will be coming down in the near future. The aim will be to empower a globally connected, agile, and resilient defense ecosystem that leverages the strengths of our international partners in industry. So bottom line, it's intended to bring existing and potential weapons system repair capability closer to the point of need, improving readiness in a contested environment. So, sir, from your perspective, how are we as the logistics community to develop those connective tissues with our allies and partners, and where do you see our logistics professionals influencing and strengthening those relationships?
All right. So thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Nanner Peele. So before I get started, I'd like for everyone in the room just to maybe think about this in your lives. And you may have to be a little bit older to be able to answer this question credibly, but how many relationships in your life are older than 20 years and are still viable? And if you kind of go through inventory, if you're 20 years old, then kind of don't count for this question, but you probably got to be 40 or 50. But if you're 40 or 50 and you kind of take inventory, relationships are seasonal. And there are folks that I grew up with that as I moved on, still know, still check in, but they aren't viable relationships. But in the U.S. Air Force, you can actually pull that off. And you can pull that off by meeting someone. And because you're in a profession of arms, you grow up together and you can find yourself on a stage with folks that you've known for 20 years. And they are viable relationships because of what we've sworn to do and what we've committed to do. So I say that to say that when you come to LOA, think about that. You are in the process of developing relationships like that. And as you're networking and talking shop, just think about how unique this profession is and how special the relationships that we build over that time period. And I'm just proud to be on stage with two folks that I can say that I have maybe a couple of handful of relationships that fit in that category. And I'm on the stage with two people who I hold dear in that way. So to get to Nanner's question, interesting time, particularly when you're talking about the National Defense Industrial Strategy, the Regional Sustainment Framework, and what our leaders are asking us to think about and to do. I talked about multiple theater, deterrence, competition, and warfighting yesterday in my talk, and it's really unique in my career to be in this spot. And our competitive advantage as a nation is our network of alliances and partnerships across the world. The PRC, I'm sure, thinks about that. I'm sure Vladimir Putin would love to say that he could build that. And when you're talking about what we're doing in the Air Force Sustainment Center, we actually decided to start to flesh out a framework building on the success of General Hurry and General Miller in their probably previous two jobs, where we are seeking to figure out how to extend our capabilities and our capacity into the theaters of warfighting. And it's not just the Indo-PACOM theater, but it's also the European theater and beyond. And we've titled it Genus, which if you took high school biology, that's my only experience with Latin words like genus. But genus is a word that the etymological root of it is galere, and it means to spawn or to birth something. So we're birthing a concept or a strategy where we're setting out to engage our partners and allies, starting with the UK. Operation Atlantic Eagle has been going on about 4 years, where we started with just a basket of commodities. And we partnered with our UK teammates and figured out how to leverage their depot capabilities and capacity in the UK to repair those parts and then deliver them back into theater to field units. Swinging that to Indo-PACOM, less of a benefit as far as the infrastructure isn't as robust. But we traveled to into theater after talking with PACAF and Indo-PACOM back in January, visited Australia, New Zealand, and the Philippines. And what we found was there's willingness and there's eagerness to partner with us to actually manifest and materialize the regional sustainment framework and complement to the National Defense Industrial Strategy. It's going to be difficult because there are all kinds of bureaucratic hurdles to getting there. There are security challenges, there are SOFA challenges, customs challenges, but it is an imperative. And so we know that we have common agreement that this is something that we all need to do. It does provide a competitive advantage to our warfighters as far as reducing the tyranny of distance and really bringing better efficiency into our logistics lines of communications. But the challenge is going to be first engaging and building that trust and collaboration. The second piece is how do we resource it? And if any of you are familiar with all of our resource processes in the sustainment business, how do you address 50-50 concerns? How do you address the financial processing and the planning that goes into if we repair a part in the Philippines using embedded personnel and Filipino population technicians? How do you actually feed that back into our system so we can still run the business parts of our enterprise? But Genus is growing. We'll do another trip here soon, next month, where we'll go to Guam, Tinian, and Saipan. Not so much from an alliance and partnership, but we're looking at WRM distribution as well. And then we'll follow suit in the fall with 2 trips, looking at Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And Major General Kenyon Bell is going to lead another trip into the Philippines, where we were invited to go visit Clark Air Base, Basa Air Base, and other locations where we can use their infrastructure, test out possibilities of embedding personnel to train, advise, and assist, but also given that we can work through the security constraints and challenges, look at having stand up an organic capability in country where our allies and partners are doing this work for us. So an exciting time, and from the Sustainment Center standpoint, it is enlarging the scale and scope of what we do from being confined within our shores to having a global footprint, and we're really excited about it.
Thank you, sir. I hope everybody's taking notes because that was a lot of insightful comments and where we're going to go as a community. So I appreciate that. Now, in all my nervousness, I forgot to actually introduce Lieutenant General Linda Hurry. So I'm sorry I didn't say your name, but yeah, I think everybody knows you anyway. So I think we're good there. But I want to. The next question is going to be for you. You spent a lot of time in the D.C. area, shaping our future force, even now as the AFMC DCOM. And the success of our regional sustainment framework that General Hawkins was talking about, it implies multiple levels of interoperability as we try to set the theater. And while the DAF has already rolled out its plans for reoptimization, the U.S. must continue to deepen its relationships with our allies and partners. So, ma'am, how do you see our logisticians engaging and cultivating the necessary relationships to grow those partner capabilities? And what are some future opportunities where they can capitalize on those relationships?
Sure. So, if you look across the global landscape, we talked a lot about interoperability, but let's focus on how that applies as we try to set the theaters. So all three of us have the opportunity to work together on that global challenge right now. And so the types of things that I think you can help us and the ways you can help us are in a couple of different ways. So first and foremost, we've been successful in getting some money to purchase RibSips. We've been successful in the past to get money for the DABS kits for the European theater. AMC is working really, really hard to get kits for RAMP. The thing is, if we buy all those assets, we have to find places to store them and sustain them. You can't just buy the assets and go, okay, great, now what? And we can't have what happened, 10, 12 years in the past, where we bought all these DAB kits and they're sitting in Holloman. The intent was to actually put them in theater. So we've got to make sure we think at things from a holistic perspective. And that starts now. And everyone in this room has to internalize that from the get-go, that we can't just buy the assets. You have to store them, you have to sustain them. Where the relationships come into play is that as you're out and about, as you're out doing exercises, build those relationships with our allies and partners. Have a good, solid understanding of where the capability and capacity to do those types of things are. Take notes. Go back to the MAGCOM. Go back to the Indo-PACOM or EUCOM to figure out what are the global requirements and where you can plug in and how we can exercise that. Speaking of exercises, when we have things like Blue Flag or Mobility Guardian, that's an opportunity, quite frankly, to exercise the TIPFID now. It takes a lot of pre-coordination, but what if you do an exercise and you move to base X, Y, or Z, and you actually leave the assets in place? Again, it takes storage and sustainment and thinking ahead, but that just helps us with the mobility challenge over the long run. Think WRM. We've got an unbelievable deficit of WRM. But what if we can actually operationalize that WRM? What if we could pull it out, use it where it's needed to help mitigate some of our operational challenges today, reconstitute it properly, put it back? But what if we can come up with a better global positioning strategy? What if we shift from one theater to the other? How do we lay out an appropriate process to do that, not when the shooting starts, but thinking through that now? And we have a whole room of IDOs. We got a whole room of log planners that really need to kind of help think through that. So WRM and the global positioning strategy. CCD, what can we do in terms of innovation and new ways to think about concealment, deception? What if we put bladders around the globe? Some of them are filled with what we intend to fill them, and some of them are just decoys. It's not just spreading aircraft out across the flight lines. What are other ways that we can go about getting after that? And that's where your collective ingenuity can come into play. It's also the relationship with our allies and partners. What can we do together in that space? And so that's a couple of the different things. Another way to exercise and to come up with ways to interoperate and better set the theater and just better posture ourselves for, God forbid, a future conflict, besides exercise, is exactly what we're doing with the Australian team right now with the E7. You know, we're potentially bringing that airframe on, and we actually have maintainers and operators in Australia right now working side by side to learn how that platform operates. We're just thinking ahead. That's just pure teamsmanship to make sure we prepare for a future fight. There's probably 100 other ways that we can get after this, and I bet you the folks in this room know how to get after that. And so we need your inputs. We need your feedback on different ways that we can kind of figuratively skin this cat. But it's super, super important, and it's all based on those relationships.
Those are great. Just mind starts running and thinking about those things. So hopefully everybody else is taking note of that too. So thank you for that. Our third question is for our esteemed Day 4, General Miller. You've been hard at work over the last several months with reoptimization. I should know, trying to get time on your calendar is very difficult.
Not that easy.
Not easy at all. But this question doesn't have to do with reoptimization. It has to do with our greatest resource, our airmen. As we see the need growing for the use of AI and ML in our day-to-day operations, we know that people still need to be in the loop for decision-making to produce to the promise we've given our warfighters of providing the resources and equipment at the point of need. So our mission-ready airmen are becoming more and more resilient and are gaining in operational knowledge and experience. And so while they're definitely more intelligent and adaptive than I ever was, so the leadership tools they need are developing as well. So to develop the leaders and the loggies that we will need, how do you see these leadership tools for our mission-ready airmen evolving? And what do you think we, collectively, what we must understand in the next 5-10 years?
Great question. And understanding is the key piece. You know, so how do we get to that understanding? Before that, just to touch on, you know, General Hawkins talked about the relationship piece, and whether it's the two of them that went to college together somewhere in Colorado, or later on, or, you know, literally, I think General Hawkins was the Thunderbird maintenance officer and probably came to an air show at Randolph, and I was the assignments officer and I met this Captain Hawkins and I think wrote your next assignment there. I mean, and literally.
To Korea, by the way.
Well,
The gloves are coming off.
that is true.
So be
Sorry,
careful
Natalie.
stopping by the
All right.
assignment desk at AFPC.
Sorry, Natalie. And have literally taken over each other's desks. I mean, no kidding. So the relationship piece is really important here. We text each other, we call each other. We went through Wing Command together, and I do feel very fortunate to be sitting up here with the two of these leaders that I have relied on for years and years and years on stuff we're talking about and stuff we're not talking about. Just one more touch point, and I promise to get to the mission-ready airman piece, but on the GPC journey and why we need to re-optimize as an Air Force, it's not that what we have been doing in the era we were in was not the right approach. It's just that the whole ecosystem has changed. If there was a concept, and we'll call it the CENTCOM concept, where rhythmically we're rotating in, there's a lot of things that went with that. There was a WRM footprint that went with that. There was a repair network piece that went with that. We didn't repair everything everywhere. We actually had centralized intermediate repair facilities at certain locations for maybe avionics at LUD and even engines at different locations. But that really worked well for the environment we were in. So the environment that we are pivoting to, because the environment's already pivoted, we're the ones that have to be optimized for that environment. That gets at that level of understanding. So what are the decision tools that an airman needs for the future that they may not have right now? It could come down to, there was a great, if you were on the industry power hour just before, and talking about advances in AR and VR and training, which is, it's really meaningful. And I haven't had the opportunity to go, for all of us to go to see what General Dietrich's team is doing at Shepherd is remarkable to watch, the change in tech training. But what if for some of those tasks, and you're trying to get down to a smaller footprint of the number of people on chalk one, because maybe chalk one's all there is, going to a spoke, and you're trying to pick, the most skilled, multi-talented humans that will go on chalk one, which is the only chalk, and there's some thing that needs to be done that the skill set is not possessed within the few humans you were able to put on chalk one. And if they had glasses that are piped back to a 7 level who's the exquisite, knowledgeable, and maybe they have an engineer sitting right next to them that is able to say, I know you don't, what material do you have in front of you? It's the, it's the Apollo problem set where they dumped all the parts of this is what they have. We've done that on ABDR in the past. I've seen it. What if those glasses are looking at the problem set and the technology exists right now for optical tracking? If Miller's looking at the wrong bolt, the technology can tell I'm looking at the wrong bolt and say, no, over here. If we can do that right now, think about the capability that you could put in the hands of the tech sergeant, the senior airman, the captain that's sitting in this audience that's actually going to have to work and succeed in this environment. So some of those tools, the technology exists, it has to be fielded, it has to be resourced. The other piece is we're not going to have enough of everything to have it everywhere. So if we have to rapidly reallocate where we're going to put things, we need to have the processes mapped for all classes of supply to know who's the authority, who can say yes. A lot of people can say no to things, I've learned. But you need to know who can say yes. Focus on that and get those decision support tools so that we can make hundreds of decisions in a day, not one. And the constraint isn't secure VTCs that you were talking about schedule. And yes, that's a totally valid thing. Schedules are hard. What if we're waiting 2 or 3 days to get 2 4-stars on the line to arm wrestle over that one asset that we've got? We've lost the initiative already just by missing that window. So all of that has got to change, and we're on a journey to that change. But when I think about what a mission-ready airman would be, and how is that beyond what we've talked about for several years, including multi-capable airmen, I think the why really matters. Mission command, understanding when you're cut off, what to do in mission command. And last piece, and I'll pitch it back to you. Oftentimes we talk about the seniority of who the decision maker is going to be. Jimmy Doolittle was a lieutenant colonel. I mean, think about the weight of responsibility. There was no callback, hey, we've been detected, do we launch the fleet? He was pretty sure he was going to be court-martialed for what he did. National hero, invigorated a nation in the early days of the war, made the decision as a lieutenant colonel, and if it had gone badly, he still had the courage to make the decision. So pushing down things doesn't magically eliminate risk. You can make better decisions if you have the information to make the decision with, and we owe you the tools to be able to do that.
If you don't mind, I'm going to piggyback on that. If you listen to what General Miller just said, he started half of his sentences with, what if? So I pose that question to all of you. I mean, that's part of the reason we all come to LOA. Yes, it's great to see everybody. It's to establish those relationships, but it's to connect the dots on the different capabilities that we have across the Air Force with our industry partners. What if? And every person knows their job better down to the tactical level details, and you know where there's challenges, and you know where the constraints are. What if we could break those? The whole reason one of the days is focused on innovation is because you guys have the answers to all these questions. You know better than us. Lord knows you don't want the 3 of us coming up with the solutions to everything, and we certainly don't need us to be the good idea fairies of the world. But you guys know where those solutions are. The whole reason Tesseract exists, RSO exists, AFWorks exists, is to take those innovative ideas on day-to-day problem sets that we have that have national implications, is to solve them and to break the bureaucracy and to capitalize on your ideas. The whole reason we had the Ether Sprint and we pose big picture level challenges is so we can draw your ideas out to help us solve the biggest problems. So being here is unbelievably rewarding, and it's inspiring for the three of us because we get to catch your ideas. We get to see what you're thinking. We can see the passion in your eyes about how we can drive change in our Air Force to be prepared for the future fight. And when General Miller and General Hawkins talked about the why, you know, the enemy's going to get a vote. Unfortunately, God forbid we ever get into a future conflict, the attrition rate is not going to look like what it has been in the past. And so why do we have mission-ready airmen? Why do we try to make things as easy as possible? Why do we try to do tele-maintenance? Because we need to put less and less airmen in harm's way. Because unfortunately, attrition is going to be a thing, and we're going to have to figure out how to lead through that. That's not an easy challenge, and we need to think about that now.
Yes, ma'am. I can see why you're a Disney fan on the what ifs, the big ideas. That's good. Hopefully it gets us all thinking. You know, when you dream about it, it's going to come true.
Yes. Okay, for the record, yes, I am a Disney fan.
That's a big understatement, by the way, if you've ever seen.
So you guys should, okay, if anybody ever comes to my house.
You will know.
You will know that. I routinely get folks asking me, hey, is there an adult living here anywhere? You know, but okay, I'm gonna quote Walt Disney. Sometimes it's fun to do the impossible. That is a quote coming from Walt Disney. That is a quote that is sitting on my desk. You know, folks said Tesseract was impossible. Yeah, look at them now. I don't like being told no. We joke about it. You know, I had the honor of having General Miller do my promotion ceremony, and he kind of pulled the string on that. And you know, my kids are like, yeah, no kidding. We don't dare tell her no. But to anything else, you know, if an airman has a challenge, yes, there's always something that says it gets in the way, but we have to be able to figure out how to get to yes. And I know the folks in the room can do it. And when somebody tells you it's impossible, I dare you to change the status quo. I dare you.
That's good. So in the time remaining, I actually wanted to take some time and let the audience see more than just three stars sitting up on stage. I wanted them to see who you really are, and as three friends. Now, I'll be careful with that. I understand. I still have a job to go back to. But I think you owe it to them as influencers for your followers to let them see more than just the put together behind the scenes, you know, on TV. Let's talk about some times when there might be some stories there in your building of friendships. I know there's probably pretty incriminating stories, and I'm not going to ask you to go there. But I believe it would be interesting to know at what moment in your Air Force journey did you know that y'all were going to be lifelong friends? And assuming that you are, assumptions can bite you. And how has LOA continued to cultivate that friendship even to this day? And I'll let whoever draws first blood gets to go.
Okay, I'll bat first. So General Hawkins and I actually met, I think we were 18.
1987.
Yes, so we're both Bold Gold, 91.
Bold gold.
Yes, and we have an amazing class, but I think the first time I actually met him, we were doing Big Bad Basic during, I don't know, basic training type of things. And
Let
I'm like,
y'all decide who was Big Bad Basic. Yeah.
No, we were not. No, we were in two different categories. But you know, we kind of then grew up together. You know, he ended up in Cadet Squadron 27. I was in 29. You know, we both have a very, very close mutual friend in Teresa Humphrey, and you know, we all just sort of grew up together a little bit. Now, admittedly, these two are core maintainers and I'm a core LRO, so our paths were kind of different at the beginning, but I would venture to say probably 10 years ago is about when we all kind of merged together and were like, okay, this is a team sport. We got to rely on each other's brains to survive. And I remember, you know, I had to follow General Hawkins as the DCM at Tinker. And these two were DCMs, and I was coming in the year behind him. And I'm like, okay, I'm following Thunderbird maintenance officer. He's been in the White House. He went to MIT. And I'm an LRO, has never stepped foot in a depot before. What could possibly go wrong? And I'm like, okay, you gotta help me out, download your brain. And some of the advice he gave me, I will tell you, sticks with me today. He said, no matter what you do, remember, learn theory of constraints and art of the possible. And he's like, because we were in the process of writing the book that you guys have all had the ability to look at, and art of the possible is still strong in the depots today, but he's like, whatever you do, learn art of the possible because it can apply everywhere. And it is, and it was so true. And unfortunately, all the rest of you guys are now benefiting from all those nuggets that I got from General Hawkins and General Litchfield at the time, because I'm like, okay, fast forward a few years and I'm now in the Pentagon, and I'm like, okay, well, if theory of constraints can work in the depot and it increased the throughput there, all of logistics is process-based. I mean, literally everything we do is process-based. And if we can do it in the depot, why can't we do it in the LRS? Why can't we do it in the deployment process? Why can't we do it in, you know, the field level maintenance? And so, because of some of those nuggets, that's why you guys are all stuck with, for lack of a better word, doing theory of constraints. But it's really changing our Air Force. The other thing he told me, and it never really dawned on me, he goes, you are General Litchfield's whisperer. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And he's like, he goes, no. He goes, you know, when you have a meeting and then the meeting closes and then you're still in the room and you get the after story, you need to tell the other two depots what is going on. He goes, and General Litchfield is going to come take you and take you for a walk, and you need to sponge and share with your brothers and sisters. And if you think about it, everything we do, when you learn something from a senior leader or a peer, the key to our success is the ability to share that information. And so that was very, very valuable advice, and it has stuck with me to this day.
And when the theory of constraints, the art of the possible, right now, the year before General Hurry was in that chair, Colonel Miller and Colonel Hawkins and Colonel Hill were on 3 times a week telecons.
This is before teams.
This is before teams. With Connie Davis, who's actually here, was one of the, this was that leadership model chart that General Hawkins had in his presentation, and all that, we were learning that. I mean, I was literally transcribing pages and pages of notes and going through, and this is what the AOP book is today. And I mean, I had been field level maintenance, Pentagon tour, just came from Bagram. I mean, I had been in AFMC once, and it was Edwards, which is not, it's AFMC, but it is not the same thing. It's not MRO, it is. And so I was listening to this and learning as we were going through it. And that piece that forged phone calls and, hey, what do you think about this? And I don't know what that means. What do you think it means? And that actually makes, and of course he had the unenviable, position of being cornered in the parking lot by General Litchfield at the time and say, hey, what do you think about WIP? And
Parking lot, bathroom.
Right? So Chris Hill and I would go, what'd you say? And so we would go, and so it has matured over time, and those phone calls back and forth. And as wing commanders, we relied on each other. So when I was wing commander, he was wing commander at the academy. I had a thing that I was working my way through, and I call and I go, and this was like at night, I'm TDY. I go, Stacey, I got a thing. What? You got like 10 minutes to tell you? He goes, I got 2 hours to tell you about that. And so he walked me through it. And it helped me. It was like reading the cliff notes to a problem set, where I could go, okay, I trust him, I trust her. You don't have to establish the trust factor. I'm just going to take your advice. I'm going to benefit from that and accelerate through that. And now I can move to the next step. And we absolutely still use that today. But what's more beneficial to you, I think, than know it about what the three of us do, I can guarantee you none of us thought we would be sitting here talking to you someday like this. We did not. And people say that a lot, and you go, yeah, we did not, 100%. So you're a senior NCO in this room, you're a civil servant, you're a CGO. You can't predict with a crystal ball what's going to happen to you, and we couldn't either. But I can tell you the value of the relationships and relying on each other would have been just the same no matter what rank is on our uniform. It would have been just as valuable. We're able to leverage it because we're in kind of positions where we can have some influence on things that we wouldn't have had influence on otherwise. But it would have been just as worthy regardless of the rank.
So the other thing that's kind of cool about our relationship is that no matter whatever is going on in our lives, because it's one thing about work, but there's life too, we have each other's back. And I don't know how many times, because we had the opportunity to work directly together for the last couple of years, I'd wander down the hallway and close the door, and we'd just sit and talk about whatever was going on and make sure. He'd always ask, are you doing okay? And are you doing okay? Everything okay? What can we do to help each other? What can we do to help the staff? And then we'd call Stacey, hey, are we good? What can we do here? Or when we talk about the professional development of some of the folks that, quite frankly, we want you to kick us out of our seats because, at some point there's going to be, fruity umbrella filled drink at some point. And, and we will cuss and discuss in the development of our airmen, and we're like, okay, what is the best thing for person X, or what's the best thing for person Y, and what do they have going on in their lives? And, we had the exec DT on Monday and Tuesday this week, something we value so very much. We met beforehand to make sure we were in sync, to make sure that, we were going to come at the problem and provide a solution that was good for everyone. Now, we don't always think alike. Okay, hey, brothers and sisters have different opinion, and we come at the problems differently, and that's good, because it's not groupthink. Two heads are better than one, and, well, three are better than two.
General Hawkins, you got something to say about
Just
that?
want to build, and again, I talked about the stream that goes through. John Hurry and I, at the academy together, but went in divergent directions, aircraft maintenance and transportation, I believe, right?
I was.
Back in the SAC, TAC, and MAC days. And then...
yes, we're old.
Yeah, but I distinctly remember the first time I saw the name Tom Miller, and it was when the Air Force Leo Marquez Maintainer of the Year award was announced. And I was like, who's this guy, Tom Miller? And just from that moment on, having peers that also model excellence, it fuels your passion and it fuels your desire to do better. Joan Hurry and I, we were actually in Korea together when you were at the AMS, working in the AMS. And I knew she was there, and I also knew that she was on the first day of the formation of the LRO career field, 2002, right? Right around about that time. And so one of the first officers to transition from being supply, trans, logistics readiness to what we now know as probably the greatest AFSC invention in the history of the Air Force. So shout out to LROs. And so watching that excellence and watching that leadership compelled me to do better. I would look at them and say, wow, if I'm going to be in this business, I need to up my game because look at what they're doing. And not saying that it's a competitive thing, but it is one of those mutually reinforcing relationships where we feed off of each other. And again, good families. I'm a Southern boy, and if we have a family dinner and no one's cussing in a discussion, something's wrong. And so we have healthy, passionate discussions about things that we care about deeply. And I think it benefits our entire Air Force. And so it's a humble honor to serve with them. Joan Miller's right. I was trying not to be here at this point in my career. So the fact that I'm here is truly a miracle. But to Joan Hurry's point, the idea of who's going to go on this journey and what groups of people are going to be on this stage. And I hope you will model and see goodness in what we've built over the past 30 years as far as how that looks and how the nation needs that to persist.
So if I could build on General Hawkins' point about, number one, first three-star LRO in Air Force history sitting next to us, which I'm proud to see. And you know, General Hurry is a teacher. She's always teaching. And so when she was the scout commander, she would teach me. You know, I would have to call. I mean, I think one of those years I was the Sustainment Center vice commander, and there were things that were moving rapidly, and there was a gap in my knowledge. And I'd call her. We'd go through. She'd give me, yeah, like that, no, not like that, no, not like that. And it was important because it was really timely. But she is a teacher. And being a teacher is a valuable piece, whether you're a master sergeant, a chief, a captain, an NHO4, regardless, that teaching capability draws people to you. Because they go, I'm going to learn something from this person. I think I want to, you know, they're not talking just to hear themselves talk. They're talking to make me better at what I do. She has that superpower for sure. And so I definitely knew General Hurry's name before, but I think the first time we really worked closely together is knowing when you were the DCM at the time of the ALC, certainly, but as the scout commander, that role has an oversized influence on the United States Air Force. That one colonel wing commander position just has an outsized impact. She had that impact, and people rely on it over and over and over again. If she kept all that knowledge in, that would be selfish. What I think she does is she tries to drive that out further. I think we were actually cross-flowing into each other's career fields at about the same time. So I was doing, they were three separate career fields at the time: log plans, trans, and supply before LRO. And so I cross-flowed into log plans about the same time you were cross-flowing into maintenance. What that taught me was the value of General Hawkins' point on LRO as a career field. That is the triple threat that the joint force needs, all three. And by combining those three into one, it was epically important for the Air Force to do. I got a slice of that in log plans, which I was grateful for. But every time I have a conversation with her, it washes over me how important all three, and even more that weren't captured in those specific career fields, are to the whole joint force.
So, you know, when we talk about a couple of the opportunities to cross-flow back and forth amongst our communities, and if that opportunity presents itself for you or for one of your troops, rush to it, because the benefit of my cross-flowing into aircraft maintenance when I was a captain was unbelievable. I learned so much about our biggest customer, quite frankly. You know, as I grew up, I was truly a better supply chain warrior because I knew what was needed from our biggest customer, the maintainers, and I knew what information was important and how the trust had to be built between the two. You know, the natural inclination, you know, you get in a big crowd and they always say, hey, what's the biggest challenge? They're like, oh, it's supply. Oh, it's maintenance. And you know, we're constantly doing this. Guys, we're all on the same dang team. But if you understand what each other needs, you can be much more successful. And so I tell you that if you have the opportunity to cross between the two, and if you have the opportunity to get some acquisition experience, now's the time to do it. Me learning acquisition right now, it's kind of a full-time sport. And I'm like, doing this early and making sure that we get the logistics aspects integrated into acquisition is critical, but making sure the maintenance and the supply and trans and log plans concepts work together. If you can get all of that working together, that's really where we need to take our Air Force.
Well, I'll leave you with, we have our teacher, we have our musician, and I'm sure there's a story about a Boy Scout in here somewhere. I'm going to leave that for next time. We'll leave it at that. since we're out of-
Trigger master.
There you go.
But we are out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for allowing me to do this. Please, one more round of applause.